The wine glass shattered before Maya could catch it. Crystal fragments exploded across marble, red liquid spreading like accusation. The dining room froze, forks suspended mid-air, conversations dying mid-syllable. Maya's white uniform suddenly felt too bright, too visible under the chandelier's unforgiving glare. Richard Hartwell stood slowly. His charcoal suit probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. His voice filled the space with surgical precision. "Are you incompetent or just careless?" Maya's throat closed. 20 tables, 40 witnesses. Her, manager already moving toward them, face tight with barely concealed panic. "Sir, I apologize. Do you know who I am?" Hartwell's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Of course you don't. People like you never do." The words hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt every eye on her skin, every judgment forming in real time. Her hands trembled as she knelt to gather the shards. "Don't bother." Hartwell stepped around her as if she were debris. "Just send someone competent next time, if that's possible here." His clients laughed, polite, obligatory sounds that felt like fists. Maya remained on her knees, fingers bleeding from crystal, chest tight with something she couldn't name yet. Humiliation, rage, the particular violence of being made invisible while everyone watched. In the corner booth, a young woman's phone remained recording. Unnoticed. 5 hours earlier, Maya had kissed her daughter's forehead in the pre-dawn darkness. Jasmine slept surrounded by pill bottles and medical equipment that blinked like reluctant stars. The newest prescription sat on the counter, $847 with insurance. Maya had paid half, promised the rest by Friday. The hospital was patient until they weren't. She braided her hair in the bathroom mirror, fingers moving through practiced motions while her mind calculated. Breakfast shift plus dinner service. Rent due in 6 days. Jasmine's physical therapy on Tuesday. The law school application bookmark still saved on her laptop, mocking her with its permanence. The Grandeur Hotel restaurant gleamed with old money and new power. Maya had worked there 3 years, long enough to know which guests tipped in hundreds and which complained about water temperature, long enough to perfect the invisible smile that said, "I'm grateful to serve you," while her mind catalogued their casual cruelties. Her co-workers were a patchwork of survival stories. Carlos sent money to family in Honduras. Yuki was putting herself through nursing school. They moved through the dining room like synchronized dancers, carrying trays that weighed more than physics suggested. Maya's grandmother's voice lived in her head on hard mornings. "Baby, your worth isn't determined by who refuses to see it." Patricia Thompson had marched in Selma, had taught Maya that dignity was internal, that justice was patient but inevitable. The notebook hidden in Maya's locker contained 3 years of accumulated knowledge, case law, legal precedents, notes, from free online courses she completed during break shifts. Dreams postponed but not abandoned. She clocked in at 6. By 6:30 the morning rush had begun. By noon she'd earned enough in tips to cover half of Friday's payment. By 1 o'clock, everything would change. Richard Hartwell arrived without a reservation, but somehow already had the best table. Maya watched her manager materialize from nowhere, all obsequious smiles and hand-wringing courtesy. The CEO moved through the restaurant like he owned the air itself. 3 men in expensive suits followed, already laughing at something Hartwell hadn't said yet. "Your server will be right with you, Mr. Hartwell." Her manager's eyes found Maya. The look said, "Be perfect, be invisible, don't mess this up." Maya approached with water glasses and menus. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to Scotch, Macallan 25. Hartwell didn't look up from his phone. "Neat. And tell your chef if he burns my steak like last time, I'll mention it to ownership." Maya's pen hovered. "Of course, sir. And for the rest of... They'll decide when they're ready." Did I stutter about the Scotch? The lunch continued in that rhythm. Hartwell's words sharp, Maya's responses smaller. His clients watched the performance with the detached amusement of men accustomed to cruelty as entertainment. The steaks arrived perfectly medium rare. Hartwell cut into his, chewed slowly, then set down his fork with theatrical precision. "This is overdone." Maya's chest tightened. "Sir, the chef prepared it exactly—" "Are you arguing with me?" Hartwell's voice rose just enough. "Do you think you know better than I do what I ordered?" "No, sir, I can have the kitchen. What I want is competence." "But apparently that's too much to expect from." His eyes traveled over her face, her uniform, her entire existence with calculated slowness. "Well, from certain hires." The silence was nuclear. Every nearby table heard it. The words he didn't say screamed louder than the ones he did. Maya reached for his wineglass to refill it. Her hand shook, barely, almost imperceptibly. The glass tilted. Red wine splashed across white tablecloth, droplets hitting Hartwell's sleeve. His face transformed. "You incompetent." The word that followed made the dining room gasp. Maya's world telescoped to a pinpoint. She heard her grandmother's voice, her daughter's laugh, the sound of every door that had ever closed in her face. She heard centuries compressed into syllables designed to reduce her to nothing. Hartwell stood, voice booming. "This is what happens when standards disappear. When anyone can do any job regardless of qualification. This," he gestured at Maya like she was evidence in a trial, "is exactly what's wrong with this country." His clients nodded. The manager rushed over, already apologizing. Maya stood frozen, glass shards at her feet, wine staining her uniform like stigmata. In the corner, a phone camera captured everything. The algorithm was already calculating virality. The staff bathroom was small and brutally fluorescent. Maya locked the stall door and pressed her forehead against cool metal. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The words echoed in her skull, multiplying, finding every old wound and pressing down hard. She'd been called that word before, 13 years old on a school bus, 19 at a college party, 23 during a traffic stop that escalated for no reason except her skin. But never this publicly, never with this many witnesses choosing silence. Her phone buzzed. "Manager, take 15. Then back to section 3. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just the assumption that she'd swallow it, smile through the rest of her shift, be grateful for employment. Maya turned on the faucet, letting cold water run over her wrists. The mirror showed someone she barely recognized, eyes rimmed red, uniform stained, dignity hanging by threads. Her grandmother's funeral had been 3 years ago. Patricia Thompson had died the day after Jasmine's diagnosis, as if the universe demanded payment in suffering. Maya had stood at the graveside thinking, "I can't do this alone." But Patricia's voice remained, "Baby, they want you to break. Don't give them the satisfaction." Maya straightened slowly. She dabbed at the wine stain with paper towels, futile but necessary. Her reflection solidified, became recognizable again. Not broken, cracked maybe, but not shattered. She thought about Jasmine asking why the world was unfair. Maya had explained it in gentle terms, age-appropriate metaphors. But the truth was sharper. The world was unfair because men like Hartwell existed, and systems protected them while women like Maya absorbed their violence for minimum wage plus tips. The door opened. Yuki entered, face tight with concern. "Maya, I'm so sorry, that was—" "I know." Maya's voice surprised her with its steadiness. "I need to get back out there." She unlocked the stall, straightened her uniform, tucked her anger somewhere deep. But as she reached for the door handle, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Not this time, not anymore. 10 years ago, Maya Thompson had been someone else entirely. Pre-law at Georgetown, 3.8 GPA, mock trial champion 2 years running. Professors who wrote recommendation letters using words like brilliant and unstoppable, a future so bright it required sunglasses. Then Jasmine arrived, unplanned but immediately loved. Maya had adjusted, planned to take 1 semester off, maybe 2. Law school could wait. Dreams were patient. Except Jasmine got sick. The diagnosis came at 14 months, a rare autoimmune disorder with a name Maya couldn't pronounce and a treatment protocol that cost more than a house. Insurance covered some. Not enough, never enough. Georgetown became a memory. Student loans went into forbearance. Dreams got packed in boxes alongside textbooks she couldn't bear to sell. Maya's grandmother had stepped in like she always did. Patricia Thompson, civil. Rights veteran, retired teacher. Woman of steel and gospel music. She'd raised Maya after the car accident that killed her parents. Now she helped with Jasmine, while Maya worked double shifts. They'd lived together in Patricia's small house. 3 generations of Thompson women making do. On quiet evenings, Patricia told stories about Selma, about marching until her feet bled, about sitting at lunch counters while people spat on her. The key, Patricia had said, hand covering Maya's, is remembering that their hatred says everything about them and nothing about you. Don't carry their poison, baby. Let it roll off like rain. But Patricia also taught her to document everything. Keep records. Know the law better than people who'd use it against her. Justice is a language, Patricia had explained. Learn to speak it fluently and they can't silence you. So Maya had kept learning. Free online courses in constitutional law, library books about employment rights, the notebook that grew thicker with case precedents and statutes. She told herself she was staying sharp for someday. Patricia died the same week Jasmine's illness worsened. Double grief, double weight. Maya had stood at the funeral thinking she might collapse under it all. Instead, she'd gotten a job at the Grandeur Hotel. Swallowed her pride. Smiled at people who didn't see her as human. Survived. For 3 years she'd survived. Made peace with postponement. Convinced herself that dignity was something you protected by avoiding confrontation. But as Maya walked back onto the dining room floor, white uniform still wine-stained, she felt something shifting. Patricia's voice in her head wasn't counseling patience anymore. It was asking, how much more are you willing to take? The shift ended at 9. Maya's feet ached with that specific pain of 8 hours standing. Carlos caught her at the employee exit. You okay? Fine. You're not. He struggled for words. Nobody should talk to you like that. Maya managed to smile. It's over. I'm going home. Except it wasn't over. Her phone buzzed as she reached the bus stop. A text from Yuki. Check Twitter. Maya's stomach dropped before she understood why. She opened the app with trembling fingers. The video had 3 million views. Posted 6 hours ago by user Witness to Truth. The caption, Billionaire CEO Richard Hartwell verbally assaults black waitress at luxury restaurant. This is 2024. This still happens. Maya watched herself through a stranger's eyes, saw the wine spill, heard Hartwell's words echoing with crystal clarity, watched her own face freeze, watched the dining room's complicit silence. The comments were a war zone. Half defending her, half attacking. But thousands of people now knew her face, her humiliation, her worst moment packaged for consumption. Maya's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. This was worse than the incident itself. Now it was permanent, viral, inescapable. Now she was humiliated waitress, a meme, a news cycle. The bus ride home blurred. She barely remembered walking to her apartment, tucking Jasmine in, collapsing on her own bed. Sleep came fitfully. She woke at 2 a.m. and made the mistake of checking her phone again. The video had 12 million views now. News outlets were picking it up. Someone had identified her. Her full name splashed across articles, reporters requesting comment. Maya sat in the darkness, head in hands. This wasn't how justice worked. Viral outrage was noise, not change. In a week, people would forget. Move on to the next scandal. She'd still be a waitress with bills and a sick daughter. Then she saw it. A comment from someone called a former Hartwell employee. This isn't the first time. DM me. Maya hesitated. The internet was full of trolls and liars. But something in the specificity made her click the message button. Within minutes, she had a reply. A former executive assistant. 6 months of employment ending in a confidential settlement after Hartwell's pattern of discriminatory behavior. The assistant couldn't share details, NDA, restrictions, but could point Maya toward others. Maya spent the next 2 hours falling down a rabbit hole of buried complaints. Pattern recognition emerging from fragments. Former employees using careful language, unable to speak directly but clearly communicating something rotten. At 4 a.m., exhausted and wired, Maya found what she needed. Court records from an ongoing federal lawsuit. 3 former employees suing Hartwell's company for systematic discrimination. The case was sealed, but the filing was public record. Maya read every word, recognized the pattern, saw her own experience reflected in legal language, hostile work environment, racial animus, retaliation. Dawn light crept through her window. Jasmine would wake soon. Maya needed to decide. Swallow this like everything else, or speak the language her grandmother had taught her. She looked at Patricia's photo on the nightstand. The old woman stared back with that familiar look. Well, what are you going to do about it? Maya opened her laptop, started typing. A formal complaint. Names, dates, witnesses, the video as evidence, the pattern as context. Her hands stopped shaking. For the first time in 10 hours she could breathe. Outside, the city woke to Sunday traffic. Inside, Maya Thompson became someone who wouldn't stay silent. The complaint would be filed by Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, everything would accelerate. But right now, in this moment, she'd done the hardest thing. Decided that her dignity was worth fighting for. Decay. Lawyers arrived on Tuesday wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Maya sat across from 3 men in a hotel conference room that smelled like leather and desperation. Her public defender, a tired woman named Janet Collins, sat beside her with a legal pad and diminishing optimism. Ms. Thompson. The lead attorney's voice was honey over concrete. We're prepared to offer a settlement. $50,000. Full confidentiality. You sign today, this disappears. Maya's heart hammered. $50,000 would cover Jasmine's medical bills for a year. Maybe more. She could breathe, sleep, stop calculating survival in her head every waking moment. There's no admission of wrongdoing, the attorney continued. Simply an acknowledgement that the incident was unfortunate. You move on. Mr. Hartwell moves on. Everyone wins. Janet leaned close. It's a good offer, Maya. These cases are hard to prove. Juries are unpredictable. Maya looked at the contract. Standard NDA language. She couldn't speak about Hartwell, the incident, the settlement. Her silence purchased for the price of temporary relief. She thought about the other voices she'd found online. The pattern of settlements, sealed complaints, erased histories. How many women had sat in rooms like this, calculating survival against dignity? No? The word felt impossibly small and infinitely heavy. The lead attorney's smile tightened. Ms. Thompson, I don't think you understand the difficulty of what you're attempting. Mr. Hartwell has resources, excellent legal representation, a spotless reputation built over decades. You're at, he glanced at his notes, Waitress with no corroborating witnesses, beyond a viral video that proves nothing except an unfortunate interaction. The video proves he used racial slurs in a public space. Does it? We've had experts analyze the audio. The sound quality is poor. Ambient noise. What people think they heard versus what's legally provable are very different things. Maya felt the room tilting. Janet touched her arm gently. A warning or comfort, she couldn't tell which. Think about your daughter, the attorney said quietly. Her medical needs. Your financial situation. Pride is expensive, Miss Thompson. Justice is even more so. The meeting ended with Maya unsigned and the attorneys visibly frustrated. She walked out into harsh afternoon sunlight, feeling simultaneously powerful and terrified. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Brave choice. But choices have consequences. Maya's blood froze. She looked around the parking lot, empty except for her car and a black sedan with tinted windows. That night, Jasmine's medication was suddenly unavailable at the hospital pharmacy. A supply chain issue, they said. Check back tomorrow. Maya knew better. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. Maya arrived at the courthouse to find news cameras forming a gauntlet. Reporters shouted questions she couldn't process. Janet guided her through with a hand on her elbow, both of them silent against the noise. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than television had taught her to expect. Hartwell sat with his legal team. 5 attorneys in formation like attack dogs on leashes. He didn't look at her. Not once. The judge was a grey-haired woman named Patricia Morrison. The coincidence of the first name felt like a message from beyond. Maya's grandmother whispering, "I'm here. Baby." But the hearing went badly from the start. Hartwell's team presented character witnesses, restaurant patrons who swore Maya had been clumsy, had spilled wine before, had received complaints. None of it was true, but they testified with convincing sincerity. They presented Maya's employment record, a write-up from 18 months ago, tardiness due to Jasmine's emergency hospitalization, but the context wasn't mentioned. Just the fact of infractions, Janet struggled to counter. The viral video was compelling but not definitive. Audio experts would be needed. Analysis would take months. The pattern of complaints Maya had found was inadmissible. Sealed cases, confidential settlements. Judge Morrison listened with an expression Maya couldn't read. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured. This case will proceed to deposition phase. Discovery will be limited to the incident in question. Miss Thompson, you understand the burden of proof rests with you? Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that Mr. Hartwell's counsel will aggressively challenge your credibility, your character, and your motives. Maya's throat was dust. Yes, Your Honor. The judge nodded slowly. Then we'll reconvene in 3 weeks for depositions. Outside, Janet looked exhausted. Maya, they're going to come after you hard. Everything in your past, every mistake, every vulnerability. Are you sure? I'm sure, but Maya wasn't sure. Not even a little bit. That evening, she received an email. Her public defender was being reassigned due to caseload management issues. A new attorney would be in touch. The message was bureaucratic and final. Maya sat in her apartment, Jasmine sleeping in the next room, phone buzzing with hateful messages from Hartwell supporters. The video's comment section had turned toxic, people calling her opportunistic gold-digging, fabricating victimhood for attention. Her doorbell rang at 9 p.m. Maya approached cautiously, looked through the peephole. A courier with an envelope. Inside, photos of Jasmine at school, at the hospital, at the park. No message, just images. The threat was crystalline. Maya's hands trembled so violently she dropped the photos. She sank to the floor back against the door, breathing in short gasps that wouldn't satisfy her lungs. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. I worked for Hartwell. I have recordings. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Riverside Park East entrance. Come alone. Maya stared at the message until her vision blurred. Hope or trap? Salvation or destruction? No way to know except walking into it. Maya arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes early. Adrenaline overriding exhaustion. The east entrance was quiet. Morning joggers passed, oblivious. Maya waited on a bench, phone clutched like a weapon, watching every approaching figure with predatory attention. 10 o'clock came and went. Then 10:30, 11. No one approached. No messages. Just Maya alone on a bench while the city moved around her indifferently. By noon she understood. Either the whistleblower had gotten cold feet, or the message had been bait to waste her time. to demoralize her further. Maya walked home through streets that felt hostile. Every glance seemed judgmental. Every conversation seemed about her. Paranoia or reality? The line was dissolving. At home, Jasmine asked why she looked sad. Maya manufactured a smile, made lunch, pretended normalcy while her world crumbled internally. The hospital called that afternoon. Jasmine's next treatment would require upfront payment. Insurance was reviewing the claim. Could Maya pay the $4,200 out of pocket? No, Maya could not. Her bank account showed $847. Her credit cards were maxed. Her options were evaporating. Friends texted suggestions wrapped in concern. Maybe take the settlement. Is this really worth it? Think about Jasmine, as if she thought about anything else. As if her daughter's face wasn't the reason she breathed. Evening came. Maya sat in darkness, Jasmine asleep. The apartment silent except for the refrigerator's mechanical hum. She held her grandmother's protest pin, tarnished brass with a raised fist. Patricia had worn it in Selma, had kept it for 50 years. Maya traced the edges, felt the weight of legacy. Her grandmother had faced fire hoses and police dogs, had been called worse things than Maya could imagine, had survived not through comfort, but through stubborn, relentless dignity. The pin felt impossibly heavy. Or maybe Maya was just impossibly tired. She closed her eyes, saw Hartwell's smirk, heard his words echoing, felt the weight of every system designed to make women like her shut up and disappear. In the darkness, something shifted. Not hope exactly, something harder, colder. The kind of resolve that emerges when survival stops being enough. Maya opened her laptop, started drafting an email. If the whistleblower wouldn't come to her, maybe she could find them herself. The email arrived at 3 a.m., jarring Maya from restless sleep. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I panicked. "Let me help." The sender, Sarah Chen, former executive assistant to Richard Hartwell. She'd worked for him for 8 months before, leaving with a settlement and an NDA that legally gagged her from speaking about specific incidents, but she could speak about facts, dates, the existence of documentation. The email contained no recordings. Those would violate her agreement, but it included a roadmap. Other former employees, people who'd left without settlements, who could speak freely. Email addresses, phone numbers, a pattern Sarah had witnessed but couldn't directly testify about. He targets women of color specifically, Sarah wrote, always in semi-public settings where there's humiliation but plausible deniability. Then he pays them off, or destroys them legally. You're the first person who didn't take the money. That terrifies him. Maya read the email 12 times, memorizing every detail. As dawn broke, she started making calls. By noon, she'd spoken to 4 former Hartwell employees. 3 had taken settlements and couldn't help. But the 4th, a black woman named Angela Wright, who'd been Hartwell's director of HR before being fired, could talk. Would talk. Had been waiting for someone to ask. He's careful, Angela explained over the phone. Never anything in writing. Always situations where it's his word against yours. But there's a pattern. If you can get multiple people to testify to the pattern, they all signed NDAs, not all of them. I didn't. He fired me for performance issues instead of offering a settlement because I threatened to go to the EEOC. My case is still pending, but I can testify about what I witnessed as HR director. Maya's chest loosened for the first time in days. Would you? I've been waiting for someone to have the courage to go public. He's done this for years. Someone needs to stop him. By evening, Maya had a list. 5 potential witnesses. Documentation of complaints that had been ignored. Fair pattern emerging from fragments. Her new attorney called court-appointed replacement. Young guy named Marcus Webb who sounded nervous but determined. Maya shared what she'd found. Heard his breathing change over the line. This changes things, Marcus said quietly. If we can establish pattern behavior, the video becomes part of a larger narrative. It's not he said, she said anymore. It's systematic discrimination. Can we win? Silence, then I don't know. But we can fight. Maya thought about her grandmother's words. Justice is a language. She was learning to speak it fluently now, vocabulary forged from pain and persistence. That night she slept for 6 hours straight, the first real sleep since the incident. Dreams came, Patricia marching, Jasmine laughing, a courtroom with light pouring through windows. When she woke, the message from Sarah Chen had forwarded documentation, dates of complaints, names of complainants. The paper trail Hartwell thought he'd buried, it wasn't enough. Not yet, but it was a foundation, a place to build from. Maya made coffee, kissed Jasmine's forehead, and started preparing for war. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, cameras lining the back wall like sentries. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table, Marcus beside her with organized folders and controlled nervousness. Across the aisle, Hartwell's legal team occupied twice the space, a show of force through real estate. Judge Morrison entered. Everyone rose. The choreography of justice beginning. This is a civil complaint alleging discrimination and hostile work environment, the judge began. We'll hear testimony, review evidence, and determine if sufficient cause exists for a trial. Mr. Webb, call your first witness. Maya took the stand. Her hands were steady now, fear metabolized into something harder. She swore on the Bible her grandmother had carried to protests. Marcus guided her through the incident. Maya spoke clearly, precisely, described the dining room, the spilled wine, the words that followed. Her voice didn't waver when she repeated what Hartwell had called her. The courtroom flinched collectively. Hartwell's lead attorney objected. Inflammatory, prejudicial. Judge Morrison overruled, then came cross-examination. Hartwell's attorney, a shark named Preston Mills, approached with practiced sympathy. Miss Thompson, you've worked in service for 3 years. Isn't it true you've had complaints before? One write-up for tardiness when my daughter had a medical emergency, but a complaint nonetheless. Isn't it possible you're simply a mediocre employee looking for a payday? Marcus objected, sustained. But the seed was planted. Preston continued. Isn't it true you never formally complained about Mr. Hartwell's language until this video went viral? I filed a complaint the next business day, after consulting with lawyers, after deciding I deserved to be treated with dignity. The courtroom murmured. Preston's smile tightened. He shifted tactics, tried to dismantle her credibility through 1,000 paper cuts. Maya answered each question with calm precision, the way Patricia had taught her, never defensive, always factual. Then Marcus called Angela Wright. The former HR director testified about complaints she'd received about Hartwell. Pattern behavior spanning 5 years. Women of color systematically targeted, humiliated, then paid off or fired. Angela had documented everything, had been ignored by Hartwell's board. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Preston asked during cross-examination. Because women who challenge powerful men typically get destroyed, Angela said quietly. But I'm done being silent. Marcus presented the documentation, email chains, complaint records, testimony from 3 other former employees who'd agreed to speak, despite personal risk. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing. Not random incidents, but calculated cruelty. Hartwell's method refined over years. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Marcus played the viral video on the courtroom screen. Audio enhanced, cleaned by experts. Hartwell's words rang with undeniable clarity. The slur, the contempt, the public humiliation captured in high definition. Judge Morrison watched without expression. When the video ended, silence hung heavy. Mr. Hartwell, the judge said, I'd like to hear from you directly. Hartwell took the stand with visible confidence. Denied everything. Claimed the audio was distorted. His words misunderstood. He was passionate about excellence, sometimes frustrated by incompetence, but never discriminatory. I've built a company that employs thousands, he said. My record speaks for itself. Marcus approached for cross-examination. "Mr. Hartwell, do you recognize Ms. Wright, my former HR director, who you fired after she reported your behavior to the board, who I terminated for performance issues, and Sarah Chen, your former executive assistant?" Hartwell's jaw tightened. "Also terminated for performance issues. And Jennifer Washington, and Maria Rodriguez." And Marcus listed 8 names. Women of color. All terminated or settled. All within 5 years. I don't recall every terminated employee. You don't recall firing 8 women of color in 5 years, all of whom reported similar complaints? Preston objected strenuously. Judge Morrison overruled. Hartwell's composure cracked. "I run a demanding company. People who can't meet standards shouldn't be employed. That's not discrimination, that's excellence. And calling Miss Thompson that word, was that excellence? I never—" Hartwell stopped, looked at his lawyers. The courtroom waited. "The audio is clear, Mr. Hartwell. The world has heard it. Are you claiming the video is fabricated?" Silence stretched. Hartwell's face reddened, his carefully constructed defense crumbling under the weight of documented pattern and undeniable recording. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you use racial slurs when addressing Miss Thompson?" The moment crystallized. Hartwell looked at Maya for the first time. Their eyes met across the courtroom, predator and prey, except the hierarchy was inverting in real time. "I was frustrated," he finally said. "I may have spoken intemperately." The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder. When silence returned, the judge's voice was steel. "I've heard enough. This case will proceed to full trial. Mr. Hartwell, I'm ordering you to undergo mandatory mediation. Ms. Thompson, this court recognizes the validity of your complaint." Maya's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Beside her, Marcus exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Hartwell's team requested immediate recess. Denied. The judge outlined next steps, trial dates, discovery protocols. Legal language that translated to one thing. Maya had won the first battle. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Maya stood at the microphone Marcus had arranged, Jasmine holding her hand, Angela Wright standing supportively behind her. "I didn't do this for attention," Maya said quietly. "I did it because dignity isn't negotiable, because my daughter deserves to grow up in a world where power doesn't mean permission to hurt people. Because my grandmother taught me that justice requires courage." The cameras captured everything. This time, Maya controlled the narrative. The settlement came 6 weeks later, negotiated not from weakness but from strength. Hartwell's company paid $2.3 million, damages split among Maya and the other women who'd come forward. Not hush money, accountability money. The distinction mattered. Hartwell stepped down as CEO. His board issued a public apology, instituted new policies, hired an independent firm to review company culture. None of it erased what happened, but it acknowledged truth. Maya used the settlement to secure Jasmine's medical care for 5 years, paid off debt, set aside money for law school, not someday but next semester, part-time classes, slow and steady, but forward motion after years of stasis. The Grandeur Hotel restaurant renamed their employee rights policy the Patricia Thompson Protocol. Maya attended the announcement ceremony, her grandmother's protest pin on her lapel. Angela Wright was hired as a consultant, helping other companies address discrimination. Sarah Chen went public with her story, NDA be damned, choosing freedom over fear. 3 months after the verdict, Maya stood outside Georgetown Law's admissions office. She'd been accepted into their evening program with a partial scholarship. Her application essay had been about justice as language, about learning to speak truth fluently. Jasmine asked if they were rich now. Maya laughed, the first genuine laugh in months. "No, baby. But we're free. That's better." They walked through campus, Jasmine's small hand in hers. Students rushed past with backpacks and determination. Maya was older than most of them, Worn by experience they hadn't lived yet. But she belonged here too. Finally. That evening she unpacked the boxes she'd stored years ago. Law textbooks with highlighted passages, notes from classes she'd never forgotten, dreams preserved in cardboard. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Webb checking in. They'd become friends through fire. He was taking on more civil rights cases, using the Hartwell victory as leverage. You started something, he'd told her. Other women are coming forward. Against other Hartwells, you made it possible. Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd survived, who'd chosen dignity when the cost was astronomical. But maybe survival was heroic. Maybe choosing yourself when the world demanded your silence was revolution. She looked at Patricia's photograph on her desk. The old woman stared back with that knowing expression. I told you, baby. Justice is patient but inevitable. Outside, the city hummed with evening traffic. Inside, Maya Thompson opened a law textbook and began reading. The future wasn't guaranteed, wasn't easy. But it was hers, and that was enough. 6 months later, Maya walked through the Grandeur Hotel's doors as a guest. Not an employee. She wore a simple dress, Jasmine beside her in lavender. They were meeting Angela and Marcus for dinner, celebrating Maya's first semester grades. All A's, of course. The dining room hadn't changed. Same chandeliers, same marble floors. But Maya moved through the space differently now. Not invisible, not less than. Just human. Their server, a young Latino man, approached with menus and genuine warmth. Maya tipped him 50%. So not charity, solidarity. Over dinner, they talked about upcoming cases, systemic change, the slow work of justice. Angela mentioned that 4 other companies had contacted her about policy reviews. Marcus shared that he'd been approached by 3 potential clients, all inspired by Maya's case. You changed things, Angela said quietly. Maya shook her head. We changed things. All of us who refused to stay silent. But later, alone in her apartment after tucking Jasmine in, Maya thought about change. How it's never singular, never one person's doing, how it's accumulated courage across generations. Patricia at lunch counters, Maya in courtrooms, Jasmine inheriting a slightly better world. The viral video still existed online. Maya didn't watch it anymore. Didn't need to. That moment didn't define her. Her response did. She opened her laptop, started drafting an essay for law school. The prompt: define justice. Other students would write about fairness, equality, legal precedent. Maya wrote, justice is what happens when dignity refuses to negotiate. When the powerless find language that the powerful can't ignore. When truth becomes louder than money, systems, reputation. Justice isn't given. It's claimed by those brave enough to believe they deserve it. She paused, fingers hovering over keys. Added one final line. My grandmother marched so I could speak. I speak so my daughter can breathe freely. That's not justice as concept. That's justice as legacy. Outside her window, the city slept and woke and moved through its rhythms. Inside, Maya Thompson, former waitress, future lawyer, forever her grandmother's granddaughter, closed her laptop and smiled, not because the world was fair, but because she'd made it slightly more accountable, and tomorrow she'd wake up and do it again. They tried to make me small. Instead, I taught my daughter how to take up space.